Well, just moments ago, Elections Canada revealed another Liberal win, this time in Terra Nova, the Peninsulas, by a mere 12 votes. That means 5 Liberals from this province could head to Ottawa as part of Mark Carney's minority government.
My heart is bursting.
We were confident in the win, but in this you never become too confident.
To be the first Conservative woman ever elected to serve.
I am overwhelmed, humbled, and just incredibly grateful.
I'm excited, I'm overwhelmed, I'm ready to go to work.
Bring this seat, keep it for the Liberal Party and for Prime Minister Carney.
And an already tight race goes into overtime as Elections Canada pressed pause on last night's count.
Do you like your politics with a little drama and intrigue? Well, that's just what happened here in Terra Nova, the Peninsulas. I'm Terry Roberts. I'll have that story coming up.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. As of about 30 minutes ago, CBC is projecting Prime Minister Mark Carney will lead a minority government. Election results continue to roll in this evening, and that's kept candidates on the edge of their seats. One of those ridings is in this province, Terra Nova, the Peninsulas, and we have breaking news on that front. Elections Canada has just declared Liberal candidate Anthony Germain elected by a very small margin, just 12 votes. That's the most narrow result in the country and will go to a recount. It all comes after a drawn-out, dramatic race. Here Now's Terry Roberts has our top story.
Terra Nova, the Peninsulas. It's a new name for a federal riding in this province. And considering the electoral drama that's unfolded here, it's a name political watchers won't soon forget. This was the scene for most of the evening in Clarenville at the election night watch party for Conservative Jonathan Rowe. Poll after poll, the 27-year-old consistently held a lead of between 400 and 600 votes. A path to victory appeared to be clear for the Conservatives in this traditionally Liberal region. You could see it in the smiles and in the reaction as the candidate's mother updated the crowd. But as the results for the last handful of polls started trickling in and Monday turned to Tuesday, the smiles began to fade, replaced by worried faces, disbelief. Liberal Anthony Germain, assembled with his supporters at a restaurant not far away, was quickly narrowing the gap. Then, gasps. A dead heat with just 3 more polls to report. Rowe supporters remained on edge, but still hopeful.
Everyone's either glued to their phone or to the TV and experiencing anxiety, stress, relief sometimes. It's everything in between.
After trailing all night, Germain took his first lead just after 1 a.m. Then with 1 poll left to report and Germain holding a narrow 46-vote lead, another twist. The outstanding poll consisted of special ballots cast by voters outside of the riding and collected in Ottawa. But because of the late hour, Elections Canada paused counting. So at 2:30 a.m., an emotionally exhausted Rowe addressed his supporters, not exactly with the words he was hoping to deliver, but by no means a concession speech.
Over history, this has been a Liberal stronghold, and we have come tonight not even knowing if we won or lost until tomorrow morning, and I think that is an amazing statement in itself.
Rowe campaigned hard for many months with a big team at his side.
We knocked every door, we made every phone call.
Germain entered at the start of the campaign, not a resident of the riding, but energized by the emergence of Liberal leader Mark Carney. Terry Roberts, CBC News, Clarenville.
As we mentioned just 30 minutes ago, the result that Anthony Germain has won that riding by only 12 votes, the most narrow race in the country, will go to a recount. It's a story we will continue to follow. Well, it's back to Ottawa for Clifford Small. The MP for Coast of Bay's Central Notre Dame was the province's lone incumbent for the Conservative Party of Canada, handily defeating his challengers in last night's election. Troy Turner has that story.
Thank you to every one of you who brought this victory home. a victory for the entire riding of Central Newfoundland and for Newfoundland and Labrador.
It was not a landslide victory, but convincing nonetheless. Small collected more than 21,000 votes, about 4,000 more than his closest competitor.
At the doors, cost of living was number one. Crime, it really, at the doors, things haven't changed since the way they were in December. It's a very humbling victory, and I'd like to thank the people. Again, I can't thank them enough.
At the Liberal candidates' headquarters last night, things were quieter. Lynette Powell, a first-time candidate, finished with 43.5% of the vote.
We knew it was going to be an uphill battle. It's always hard to unseat an incumbent. And I gave it everything I had. Like, I have traveled 3,000 kilometers in the last 5 days to try to make sure that every part of this riding district actually saw my face and got to know who I was.
It's too early to tell what her political future will hold, she says. For now, it's back to work as a family physician.
This was very vulnerable for me. I'm used to being the fixer, the person who's taking care. So going up to people who I didn't know and putting myself out there was hard. It took a lot of learning, and I had some very good mentors. But, I learned that you can do hard things, and I'd encourage anybody who is given this opportunity to take it.
NDP candidate Darian Vincent collected fewer than 1,000 votes. Troy Turner, CBC News, Grand Falls, Windsor.
Well, Paul Connors beat out Conservative candidate Steve Kent in the riding of Avalon. Connors says he was blown away by the support. Meanwhile, Kent addressed a controversial fashion choice and is stressing he does not stand with Donald Trump.
The people that I met at the doors, the telephone calls that we made, everybody was so nice. And it was unbelievable. I could feel the support. I could feel that this was an election that was more about Canada and unifying Canada than it was about anything else.
And I have to ask, do you think the MAGA hat affected you adversely? It's unfortunate that people sometimes focus on things that are rather silly. Another media outlet clearly reported what I said about that silly photo that's floating around almost a decade ago, before Donald Trump was even the president of the United States the first time. I've never been a MAGA supporter. I've never been a Donald Trump supporter. And it's unfortunate that Donald Trump has chosen to interfere with Canada's election process and create a lot of noise and distraction. And what it's done is distracted from the real issues facing this country: cost of living, crime, government spending that's out of control, other issues, a housing crisis, other issues that are affecting everyday Canadians in a significant way. That's what this election should be about.
Now to the west, Carol Anstey has turned the West Coast from red to blue as the first female Conservative MP elected from Newfoundland and Labrador. As Here Now's Colleen Connors reports, Anstey won her second attempt by more than 3,000 votes.
Newly elected Carol Anstey was surrounded by supporters at the Holiday Inn in Deer Lake. The Conservative Party took Long Range Mountains by 3,516 votes over Liberal candidate Don Bradshaw.
Because tonight, my friends, we have made history.
Anstey is a real estate agent based in Deer Lake who tried to take the spot in 2021 from Liberal Goody Hutchings, losing only by 1,800 votes. Her blue posters have cropped up all over the riding, a sea of blue that has now flipped the seat, something she says took boots on the ground.
I think sometimes it just takes time. People are a little bit fearful of change, and oftentimes they vote Liberal because their parents voted Liberal and their grandparents voted Liberal, and so it really took some time to get around the riding, promote our message of hope and change, and to really change people's minds one door at a time. It was a lot of work, but it's well worth it.
This riding hasn't been Conservative since 1978. The Liberals tried to ride the red wave with a familiar face, broadcaster Don Bradshaw, whose name and face popped up on signs about 3 weeks ago. Polls suggested the Liberals had it in the bag, but their watch party quickly turned somber as the numbers began rolling in.
See, this didn't go the way we had anticipated and we had hoped, but these things happen.
It's a loss Bradshaw doesn't quite understand. Don, what happened?
I really don't know. I mean, we were getting good response at the doors, and our phone calls were indicating that we had a lot of support. Ms. Anstey obviously ran a strong campaign. She's been doing this for a while now, obviously after losing the last election. But you know, that's not to say that she doesn't deserve this. I mean, it was a solid campaign.
About young people searching for a reason to stay.
A campaign that was underway a lot longer than her Liberal counterpart. Bradshaw says it's possible feedback from the doorstep just wasn't reliable. He says there's no plan to return to work behind the camera. He's retired now. As for Anstey, she'll be heading to Ottawa as the first female Conservative MP from this province. But it may not be that easy. This Conservative riding is up against a Liberal government, and these political sides are very polarized. It'll soon be up to Anstey to bring the issues of this riding, things like the fishery and the high cost of living, forward. And she'll most likely have to work with the Liberals to do that. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Corner Brook.
Well, turning now to the first riding in the country declared last night, and that's Labrador, which has a new MP for the first time in 12 years, replacing longtime Liberal Yvonne Jones. Daryl Din has more on the newly elected Liberal MP Philip Earle.
Philip Earle, a well-known and successful businessman in Labrador, involved with companies such as Air Labrador, succeeding Yvonne Jones as the Liberal candidate in the riding of Labrador.
Philip Earle was all smiles, the first elected MP in the country.
Oh, I have to say it felt good. I'm glad it didn't go on for much longer. I was anxious. We knew we were in a good position. We were hearing that at the doors. We were hearing why people wanted to vote for me and the Liberal Party.
The well-known businessman is happy to be the next face to represent the big land.
Excited, but also humbled. I think this election campaign, getting around Labrador as I did, talking to people, it's hard to come out of it with a win without being humble and knowing that I'm now going to be working for 27,000 Labradorians.
For 12 years, Yvonne Jones held the federal seat. She's happy to pass the baton to Earle and to enjoy this next chapter of her life.
I'm officially retired from politics at this stage, at least federal politics in the House of Commons. Yeah, it's been a great campaign. It's been fun campaigning with other candidates. You don't have the same kind of stress as you do when you're in your own campaign, so I've kind of enjoyed it a whole lot more.
One big concern they heard on the campaign trail was health care.
Home care, especially for people who have to send their elders away. It'd be like me sending my mother to China to send an Indigenous person who couldn't speak English to even Happy Valley Goose Bay.
That being one of the many issues Earle plans to tackle with Mark Carney.
Under his leadership, so I'm certainly looking forward to serving under him in Ottawa.
Earle won Labrador with about 51% of the vote. The Conservatives had almost 42% and the NDP had almost 7%. Daryl Din, CBC News, Happy Valley Goose Bay.
Well, some of us saw some beautiful weather today, some sunshine and temperatures quite mild, but that onshore flow, especially in the east, keeping those temperatures cold. We're going to watch this cold front because as it moves through, the backside of that front has some cold air, and it is going to bring, you can see that cold air here, and it is going to bring some wintry weather to parts of Labrador. But for today, take a look at these temperatures. 14 degrees in Happy Valley Goose Bay, 10 in Makkovik. This will look very different through tomorrow. Across the island, depending on where you are, 2 degrees in St. John's, through parts of Deer Lake, 15 degrees. Corner Brook, 13 this afternoon, but that is all going to change, especially for parts of Labrador. We're looking at some snow tonight, showers changing to snow for you. That snow will continue through Labrador tomorrow. We could see some significant accumulation, and then roller coaster temperatures, teens by the time we get to the weekend. We'll get into details coming up a little later.
Continuing with our election coverage from last night, Liberal Tom Osborne swept the vote last night in the newly created riding of Cape Spear. It's a seat that was held by Seamus O'Regan. Osborne is a longtime provincial politician and won more than 68% of the vote, beating Conservative Corey Curtis and the NDP's Brenda Walsh.
I said Ma'am and Bob Bridgley, who's here somewhere, were both members of the House. Dad was on City Council many, many years ago. He has been a champion for our family, and 2 or 3 weeks ago he rang the bell. So, glad he could be here with us tonight. You know, this is a big commitment, and I understand that. But it's just as big a commitment for family. So I want to thank Daphne and Rhiannon and Regan as well for not only allowing me to do this, but encouraging me to do this, because this is a huge commitment on family.
Well, with 3 political heavyweights in the running, St. John's East was expected to be a tight race, but it ended with a decisive win for the Liberals. Here Now's Henrika Wilhelm has more on the Liberal incumbent that held her seat.
It was all cheers at the Liberal headquarters in St. John's East when incumbent Joanne Thompson hit the stage to celebrate her win.
I had no doubt that we were going to do this because I know the team that I have behind me. So St. John's East, we have our elbows up.
Elbows up to defend the Liberal seat, which Thompson has been holding since 2021. And it's a historic win overall, the first time in around 50 years that the Liberal Party was able to do just that in the riding.
I am overwhelmed, humbled, and just incredibly grateful of staying close to constituents, really understanding the value of riding associations, and I think that's a lesson for all of us in Canada. Incredibly important. The work has to continue because it really is the work of engagement and volunteerism and really staying close to the grassroots in your riding.
Thompson won with about 60% of the vote. Runner-up Conservative candidate David Brazel only secured roughly half of that. And yet here, at his headquarters in Airport Heights, his supporters greeted him like a winner. Brazel, a longtime MHA for the Progressive Conservatives, retired from the political stage in 2023, but made a return in hopes to win the federal seat, which was last held by the Conservatives in 2008.
Former 6 elections I've had, there's always things I regretted, things we could have did better and all these type of things. But in this one, I can guarantee you honestly, there's nothing we left on the table that we couldn't have done differently that would have changed the outcome.
Over at the NDP headquarters, the same sentiment. The riding was held by the New Democrats between 2008 and 2015, and again from 2019 to 2021. But on Monday night, candidate Mary Shortall, Labour organizer and federal party president, only managed to get about 11% of the votes, a far cry from the last federal election when the NDP was second strongest party in the riding.
Well, it wasn't what we had hoped for sure.
Shortall believes in this election it was more about federal issues and not the particular riding that decided where voters placed their X, ultimately leading to low results for her party.
People are really feeling threatened by the geopolitical state, also about what might happen and what's going to happen to them in the future. And I think that narrative has been very dominant in a lot of the media coverage during the election campaign. And people, I think, this time really felt like they needed to vote for something bigger than just what's in St. John's East.
And so Liberal Joanne Thompson will return to Ottawa, where she had been made Fisheries Minister just before Mark Carney dissolved Parliament in March. Henrika Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
Crews continue to search for a missing pilot after a small plane went down east of St. John's this morning. They're looking for a man whose single-engine float plane crashed into the ocean shortly after 8:30 a.m. island time. The Transportation Safety Board says the American aircraft left St. John's International Airport en route to Portugal. The lone man on board is also believed to be from the U.S. Search and rescue crews spotted the plane's pontoon on the surface of the water, as well as an orange life raft and some debris. However, no person has been recovered. Okay, time for a look at the weather. Ashley, it was a fairly nice day out there today.
Depending on where you were, for sure. Beautiful through parts of Central, West Coast, even seeing some beautiful weather today. But yeah, we've got some onshore flow in the east, and that's keeping the clouds around for a little while longer. But that is going to change as we head through the day tomorrow. That area of low pressure offshore will continue to track offshore. Then we've got this area of low pressure, or rather high pressure to the south. That's dominating the weather picture through Central, which is why we're seeing plenty of sunshine. And then we're watching this cold front. In behind that, some much colder air, and that is going to change the rain that is currently happening for at least Lab West at the moment, over to some snow as we head through the night tonight and into tomorrow. So here's a picture of what's happening, live shots from parts of the province anyway. Goose Bay dry at the moment, Gander blue sky, Lumsden blue sky. Beautiful spring-like weather. You head east. It's cloudy and temperatures are much cooler. Only seeing about 1 degree right now in St. John's. Those winds out of the northeast, 20 to as much as 30 kilometers per hour. But the good news is things will turn around as we head through tomorrow. It's still a beautiful evening in Deer Lake at 15 degrees, 12 in Corner Brook, and temperatures are starting to drop, I should say, up across Labrador down to 5 degrees in Lab City at the moment. And we are seeing that cloud cover moving in as well. High cloud for the west coast. That will continue as we head through tonight. We're seeing some shower activity well to the west. That's going to move in. By the time we get into the early morning hours, nothing's too significant, at least for now. And then there's that area of low pressure bringing that cloud cover, or at least the onshore flow bringing that cloud cover, as well as the chance of some drizzle in places. But overall, nothing too significant through the overnight. In fact, we should start to see some of that clear out by the time we get into the morning. So showers for the most part up across Labrador. Once that front starts to move through, it does look like things will change over to snow by the time we get into the early morning hours. Some of this snow will likely be fairly heavy at times, wet as well. And then across the island, by the time we get into tomorrow morning, you're likely still going to see some clear skies, especially through parts of Central. Temperatures tonight will sit either in the minus single digits or just a few degrees above zero across the island. And then for Happy Valley, Goose Bay towards the coast, your temperatures will sit somewhere between 2 and 4 degrees. The rest of Labrador between -3 and -6. Note that wind shift from southwesterlies to northeasterlies, and that's why you're seeing that change in temperatures. Your winds will be gusting upwards of about 50 kilometers per hour, pretty much from Lab City through to the coast. Now, into tomorrow afternoon, we're going to see that snow continue for Lab West. We'll see that changeover happen into the afternoon for the Happy Valley Goose Bay area, and then eventually towards the coast as well. Southeastern portions of Labrador, you're looking at showers for a good chunk of the day. That's the case for the western portion of the island as well. Now, from central eastward, should be a pretty beautiful day, at least to start. Clouds will be on the increase. You'll also see that chance of some showers in the afternoon and evening for Central. Same thing for the Northern Peninsula, and then those showers will arrive on the Avalon later in the evening and then towards the overnight as well, with some of this being some periods of rain. And then eventually southeastern Labrador through the overnight, you will also see this change over to some snow. Now, as far as amounts go, we could see some significant snowfall amounts with this. I do think this is overdone. Likely 10 to 15 is a good bet, and particularly in the higher elevations. Now, as far as the temperatures go for tomorrow, take a look at this. 10 to 12 degrees. Onshore flow is going to keep those temperatures cooler, though only 4 or 5 degrees. Same thing for the northern peninsula. And then for Labrador, the first part of the day, between 4 and 5 degrees. They will drop through the afternoon and then hanging out in the minus single digits for Lab West. Windy, though, tomorrow across the island. I'll get into details for the long range coming up a little later.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, the town of Paradise has a newly named street in the Lakeside subdivision. 16-year-old J.D. Traynor was a town resident and talented hockey player who died in January from cancer. To honor him, teammates, his parents, and even the Premier showed up for a street dedication.
Thank you all for being here this morning at the Paradise Double Ice Complex, a place where we gather for hockey, community, and countless memories. It's a fitting place to come together to honor the legacy of one of our residents, J.D. Traynor. J.D.'s name has become known across Newfoundland and Labrador, not just for his skill on the ice, but for the values he represented.
Today, we come together not just to name a road, but to honor a young man whose spirit, kindness, and strength has indeed left a lasting mark on his community.
J.D. was more impressed by the quality of a person than the quantity of them. He promoted doing the right thing. He respected those who tried hard and wanted more from life. And he had a close group of friends from the Elizabeth Park area, and boys, he respected you a lot. In the days following his passing, so many people reached out to tell us their favorite story of J.D. And I want to share a couple with you. It wasn't the championship game. It wasn't the game-winning goal. We heard stories about a kid being bullied on the bus. So J.D. switched seats. He sat with the boy for the next few months and made sure the bullying stopped. When a younger player on one of J.D.'s teams was coming in the dressing room, J.D. made sure that he felt comfortable. He moved equipment, made sure the boy had a place to sit, and made sure he was included in the team activities. And as a parent, these were the stories that made us proud. And these are the stories about the quality of person that J.D. was.
I think it was really an anti-government vote, which is what a Conservative vote has been in Newfoundland from time to time.
I'd argue that the Liberals sometimes campaign about the idea of rural Newfoundland and Labrador, and then the Conservatives sometimes get to the reality of living in rural Newfoundland and Labrador.
Well, Conservative support in this province has grown. Stay with us. Peter Cowan and his political panel are reacting to last night's and today's election results. They didn't form government, but it was still a good night for Conservatives in this province. They picked up one seat and held another and saw much stronger support. So what's behind this? Our political panel is here to weigh in. Former Liberal MP Scott Sims, NDP strategist Amanda Will, and Conservative political consultant Eugene Manning sat down with Peter Cowan to make sense of the results.
So let's start with the big story of the night, the rise of Conservative support across the province, but especially outside of the overpass. We saw the Conservatives picking up support, a lot of blue on the map. Scott, you were just in Central. What do you think's driving this?
Here's what I've noticed, and I'd love to get everybody's opinion on this. For decades since Confederation, there has been this color scheme across the province, all 7 ridings, where it's been complete opposite of the rest of the country. The urban areas in Newfoundland and Labrador, the urban areas are blue and everybody else is red, Liberal. This election, you see signs of it reversing. And and what I noticed in Central, since you asked the question, was the Conservative voters were not so much about reactionary this time, like I experienced in my campaign. It wasn't all about, I didn't like Trudeau or I don't like Carney. There were also issues grounded in what Conservatives have been saying. Crime, oil and gas. There are sections of central Newfoundland that there are big communities. Evangelical Christians. Before they were mostly Conservative, now they're all in. There's also oil and gas workers in the natural resources. They're all in on Conservative as well. I think you may be seeing the beginnings of a long tenure of blue seats outside of St. John's.
Eugene, I want to ask you about this, because if you look at, for example, the Corner Brook area, the last time there was a Conservative MP, you'd have to go back to the 70s. So what do you make of this shift?
Well, we're up across the board in the province. I think every seat we polled better than we did in 2021. On that particular point, though, Scott, and some would argue it goes back to Confederation, anti-Confederation, and that eventual shift. We talked about it here a few weeks ago as well. I think there's a real conversation to be had around, I'd argue that the Liberals sometimes campaign about the idea of rural Newfoundland and Labrador, and then the Conservatives sometimes get to the reality of living in rural Newfoundland and Labrador. And while it's a beautiful area and there's great things there, and believe me, I'm from there and love it, people are also trying to make a living there. So I think Cliff mentioned in his clip last night, crime, cost of living, developing our natural resources. I mean, at some point it gets down to brass tacks, and the old adage is the economy's stupid, but people get back to the realities of how you got to make a living and live in these places.
I think that as well, just to make a comment on this, that people were feeling not represented well by their Liberal member. They felt that, and especially even though they had a new leader and all that,
And new candidates, because very few incumbents running.
Exactly, that they did not feel represented by them. I think they were. I think the other interesting thing is that what Carney was actually campaigning on, which was to be afraid of Trump, and be concerned about that, and we all have to get together. Where we did see some of that, certainly I did see that in St. John's while knocking on doors, that that was not their concern, to your point, that they were concerned about the cost of living and things like that. But they were really, I think it was really an anti-government vote, which is what a Conservative vote has been in Newfoundland from time to time. So.
I want to ask you about the NDP support, because there was a lot of hope. St. John's East, Mary Shortall running again, ended up with about 11% of the vote. What message were voters giving the NDP last night?
Well, I think that there was a lot of, I'm not sure, a lot of people were scared. Like those, I mentioned the conversations I'd had on the door about, they didn't know, they were worried about Trump, they were worried about Polyev. Our message still was, everybody said, absolutely agree, pharmacare, dental care, and we need you for that. But there was this thing that was being pushed that was, we must do this, which is fight against Trump. And I think that did actually have an impact.
Right now, we're looking at a minority, although CBC, at the time of this taping, hasn't actually called it yet. They're still waiting for some races. But either way, it's going to be pretty tight. What does that do to the power that the MPs in Newfoundland and Labrador have when you do have either a minority or a very, very slim majority here? Eugene?
I think it puts it in a very interesting position, because MPs here traditionally, and Scott, you're one of those, in Ottawa have always been considered Newfoundland and Labrador MPs to be quite independent thinking and representing their province well. And yourself, going back to Bill Matthews and Ken McDonald, even in the past sitting, have often voted against their party and done things of that nature. So you're going to be in a position here where the Newfoundland and Labrador Liberal MPs could be holding the balance of power in Ottawa. And if we have a big issue, so for example, you have Prime Minister Carney now, who's going to have to placate the Bloc Québécois to maintain their power dynamic there. And there's huge issues that we have with the province of Quebec at the moment. Those 4 or possibly 5 MPs, I'd like to think 4, are going to be in a very difficult position as votes come forward to House in representing their party or their province. And while I'm sure they're happy this morning that they won, not far down the road, there's going to be some tough decisions ahead for them and where they stand.
This is going to be very interesting because the numbers are tight. They're like razor thin. And here's what I mean by that. This is going to be, if you want to rebel against your own party, or in this case, let's say you rebel against the government or you're in opposition, you've got a big decision to make. Because there were many times when I did it, I knew that if I rebelled and voted against, I knew the legislation would still pass. So even though I was a pain in the butt to the Liberals, I wasn't that big of a pain because they knew the legislation was going to pass anyway. Now you've got numbers that are less than 10. So you might have, let's say Carney does something that's against Newfoundland and Labrador. This is going to be a big decision because now this could be separated by only 3 or 4 votes. So if you get 2 or 3 Liberals here rebel, that means you could sink legislation, sink some of the motions and initiatives. So it's serious stuff now.
I know in the past, Newfoundland and Labrador has held an office in Ottawa. The issue of intergovernmental affairs and how we have now 10 provincial governments and 10 provincial premiers and how they wield their power in Ottawa.
That's a good point.
With the, I mean, while there's still numerous parties, now that we're kind of broke into one or the other,
that's right.
Those premiers have just become much more powerful on the national scene than they were before. And also, even provincially, within Newfoundland and Labrador, I would say that our intergovernmental affairs department is a department that has kind of gone to the wayside the past few years. You don't hear much about it. I think it's ran out of the Premier's office, but that's going to be a very key portfolio in how that relationship with Ottawa and that relationship with the other Atlantic premiers and premiers across the country exists from here going forward.
Especially when you want to talk about things about energy corridors. That's going to, and interprovincial trade, of course. That is going to be very interesting to see how Carney handles this. I think he can handle it well, but...
And that may be an example of an issue where Quebec is on one side and Newfoundland and Labrador is on the other.
And there we are.
And we should be a part of an east-west energy grid.
Absolutely.
You know? And that has been something we've talked about, I think, all the parties at one point or another.
Decades overdue, I would even say. Sorry.
And then there's all the talk of interprovincial trade barriers, which, depending on how serious you are, you know, there's a bunch that this province wants to keep, like around the fishery, around alcohol, and maybe another point of view.
And how those line up with your national interests, meaning it's going to become a real barter system and a trade-off between the provinces in leveraging. It's going to be a bit of backroom old school power brokers in terms of how you leverage your assets and your resources to get where you want to be in the long term. It's an interesting time to be involved in politics for sure.
Well, yeah, we'll have a new premier as well coming up soon. We'll have a new prime minister. How these all work together will be very interesting. And I mean, what I really don't want to see lost in all of the stuff about, you know, the tariff scare and all of that is that people get left out, because there are some things that are really missing from that national platform, which is around things like there. You know, Carney said he was going to cut the health transfers. That's going to be quite a discussion for any premiers to be having across the country as well. You know, that is, and that I'm really concerned about, especially in Newfoundland, where we need, nurses and doctors.
Well, as we reported earlier, the CBC is now projecting a Liberal minority government. The call coming nearly a day after Mark Carney led the Liberals to a narrow victory with many seats too close to call. Well, that's Liberal leader Mark Carney celebrating last night's win. So far, the Liberals have been elected or leading in 169 seats, just shy of the 172 needed to form a majority. Meantime, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says he'll be stepping down, with the NDP set to lose official party status and Singh himself losing his own seat to Liberal Wade Chang. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has also lost his longtime Ottawa riding to Liberal Bruce Fanjoy. Well, Donald Trump is marking 100 days in office by holding a rally in Michigan.
He has stood firm, he stood strong, and he's delivering on his message.
He's the man of his words. He said that I'm going to secure the border. If you go to the southern border, you can see a bird cannot cross the border.
Well, rally-goers reflecting on Trump's last 3 months in office. It's expected to be his largest political event. Since returning to the White House, the president was expected to tout his administration's highlights so far at the rally, a period defined by immigration crackdowns, government slashing, global tariffs, and the upending of international alliances. We'll be right back. Well, we've been talking a lot of politics on the show tonight, so how's this for a palate cleanser for you? In September, a turtle named Root found a new home at a Halifax museum. Now, Root is missing a foot, so staff decided to give him a leg up. The CBC's Francis Willick has his story.
This is Root. No one knows exactly how he came to be missing his right front foot. But thanks to a mobility aid made of Lego, it's not slowing this turtle down.
We didn't want to make a skateboard or make anything that would just have him zooming too naturally fast, but he's clearly going a little faster than the average wood turtle, but he seems happy to do so. He's getting lots of great exercise.
When he came to the Natural History Museum in September, it was clear Root needed a bit of help.
When he walks, because one leg is essentially shorter than the other one, we found that he was kind of clunking his shell down.
Root's bottom shell was getting damaged from dragging on the floor, so staff decided to create something that would lift him up a bit.
I thought that Lego would be a great option. At the time, we had a Lego exhibit at the museum. We have that just about every winter. And we thought that'd be so great because we know it's non-toxic. We know that we can replace the parts as we need. And should his shell change or grow, we can change the shape and size of that. It's very modular.
Biesterfeld attached a Lego platform and Lego wheels to a small dog harness, and Root's mobility aid was born.
There we go.
Root quickly became accustomed to the device, and with the help of his wheels, he enjoys exploring different areas of the museum.
We may have him for a while, so we want to make sure he's comfortable.
Root is about 20 years old. Wood turtles are a species at risk in Nova Scotia and can live for up to 80 years. Staff have not allowed Root to get up close and personal with the museum's beloved gopher turtle, Gus. That's because they might not get along and turtles can pass diseases onto each other. But with Root's fancy wheels, it's possible the museum could have another celebrity on its hands. Francis Willick, CBC News, Halifax.
That was exactly what I needed.
I completely agree.
Another celebrity? 80 years old? How genius was using the Lego?
Oh, that was fabulous.
Yeah. Thank you for
Thank
that
you.
story. Just love that. Love Root. Okay, let's talk about the weather. And you mentioned earlier that things are going to be looking up.
Yep, they are, especially as we head to the weekend. Temperature, some of the warmest temperatures potentially that we will have seen. So let's take a look at what's going on. It's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster before we get there. But so Wednesday evening into Thursday, that area of low pressure bringing that snow up across Labrador will start to bring some much colder air across the island as well through the day. Potentially even seeing some flurries on the west coast of the island. Other than that, we may see some sunshine in the first part of the day in the east, and then eventually those clouds will take over and it will be a little bit unsettled. We're going to continue to see some wintry weather towards the coast of Labrador into the afternoon, and then potentially the northern peninsula as well. And here's your temperatures. They will sit into the single digits, 1 to 5 degrees at the most across the island. Labrador, same thing, anywhere from 1 to 6 though. Nate, you're going to sit this one out. You're going to sit in some sunshine through the day on Thursday, which will be nice. And then eventually you'll see some clearing skies around Happy Valley, Goose Bay as well. Now for Thursday evening, that area of low pressure will move off. And by the time we get into Friday, another clearing trend for most of Labrador through the afternoon. So you'll be seeing some sunshine. Now Lab West, you will see your clouds most of the day, and then they'll be on the increase across the Big Land as the day goes on. Now, as far as the island goes, nice ridge of high pressure, some sunshine, maybe a little bit more cloud cover in the east, but overall temperatures are going to start to rebound. That will be the story through central. So again, if you're away from that onshore flow, temperatures will likely be in the double digits, otherwise between 8 or 9 degrees through the day. And then we're going to continue to see some colder air, at least through the first part of Friday for St. John's, where you'll hover, or at least east, where you'll hover around 4 degrees through the day. And then for Labrador, overall daytime highs will range from 1 degree in the north to anywhere from 6 to 9 degrees for central areas of Labrador and then towards the coast as well. And again, late day, you'll see some more snow, wintry weather move in for Lab West. Take a look at this long range, though. It looks pretty lovely. Temperatures likely in the teens by the time we get into Sunday for St. John's and eastern Newfoundland. Saturday will likely feature a few showers, but there will also be some sunshine. Temperatures in the double digits, around 10 degrees. And then for Central, you could be nearing 20 by the time we get into Sunday. It will be breezy, though. Western Newfoundland, you're looking at your temperatures in the teens as well by the time we get into Sunday. And then for Labrador, the single digits, minus single digits overnight. Rainy weekend on tap for those of you in the east, and a little bit more of a wintry mix in the west, although your temperatures will still sit between 5 and 6 degrees for the weekend. Our weather photos today taken in Traytown. Take a look at this.
Oh.
Isn't that cool?
It is so... Oh, Pine Martin.
Yeah.
Yes. Adorable.
Absolutely adorable. Just hanging out in the trees there. Thank you to Ross for that photo, and we love seeing them, so share them with us. You can send them to my Facebook page or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
So cute. Thank you so much, Ross.
They're so cute.
Yes. Well, that's it for us. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us.
Good night.